Okay, here I go again. This is Jesse. I keep saying that's the only name that I'll do any media, whether it's write an article or do a video essay. I've gotten down to where I don't want to write anymore. I'm too exhausted, too mentally and physically sick. So I can combine my work, or what I call conducting business, with media efforts because it's necessary. And what's on my mind today is, everything that we see, commerce, stores, call it what you want to call it, resins. I mean, the whole industrial experience should have begun with us. We should have been the people in charge, and we should be the ones fabricating and constructing what the industrial environment that we live under. Unfortunately, we're not. And the reason that we're not is because we really are not in charge. You can't profess to be in charge when you are not in charge. And we are not in charge because we don't pay attention, and because we don't try to influence our surroundings by being in direct contact with those individuals who call themselves leaders, elected officials. And we suffer, the consequences of it. I've said it before, it is a great mistake to elect somebody to political office here. But, certain things are encouraging because if you look at it, those who pay attention, those who are involved, have managed to have some kind of success. The war against illegal immigration reform started back with Ronald Reagan, but really, caught fire during 2006 when George W. Bush was trying to promote it and push it through the Congress. And a lot of people, the bell was rung by Rush Limbaugh, Laura Ingraham, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, and many in the House of Representatives, brought to the attention of people, and people emailed, phone called, somehow found a way to communicate to the elected officials that they were not in favor of illegal immigration reform. Obama could have, and he did, politicized the issue, and that was all it was. It was all politics for Obama. Democrats and Obama had no intention of passing illegal immigration reform, and the proof is that they did it. The first 2 years of Obama's presidency, they could have passed it, and they did it. And the reason, I suspect, was politics. If they had passed illegal immigration reform, they would have suffered greatly for it. What ultimately turned out to be Obamacare is a catastrophe. It's a financial catastrophe because people cannot afford insurance. You're basically paying for insurance you're not going to use. I mean, if you have a $6,000 to $10,000 deductible, you're going to be paying a lot of personal health care before the insurance even kicks in. And in reality, that's the way it really should be. We waste a lot of money on satellite TV, on cable television, on the internet, on cell phones, on emails every Friday, and we should be responsible for our health care, and we should pay. The problem I have with insurance is that they're miserable little creeps. You can't trust them. You get a 100-page agreement that I'm pretty sure the majority of people do not read. And then they need their insurance, and their insurance company says, well, if you had read the agreement, you would have realized that you were not covered for such. And the sad part is that even when you are covered, they still find a way to play. So So I don't have a problem being personally responsible and purchasing insurance. I have a problem with purchasing insurance that's going to cost me $400 a month for me and myself. And when it comes time to needing it, they're going to do everything possible. And by that day, I mean the people in the insurance industry, the insurance company that I have business with, that I pay some money to, are going to find some way to deny services. So it's not a nice little industry that, is out to take care of you when you have a financial relationship with them. That stupid commercial about like a good neighbor were there. They're not a good neighbor. And well, by modern standards, most neighbors are creeps. Play the music too loud, let the garbage can roll all over the place, with the high winds. So when you're talking about where everything begins with the individual, the person. And unfortunately, too many individuals, too many people, one, cannot be bothered to take an interest, and two, have foolish ideas. And then you got to ask yourself the question is how do you reach people? Because we can't afford as a society to have a bunch of people believing that a presidential candidate is racist. I mean, I followed Donald Trump from the first time. In fact, I didn't follow him in 2012, and I was part of the movement against him running in 2012. In 2014, when he announced, 2015 when he announced, I started looking at what he was all about. I saw his first interview with Fox News, and that's when he the quote unquote, Mexicans are murderers, rapists, and thieves speech that many people use to label him as a racist person. I was born in Mexico. Some people are born in Mexico with Mexican parents, and the morality question is a serious question when you're dealing with people from Mexico. The morality question is a serious question when you're dealing with people from the Middle East. They just have a unique way of thinking, and I can tell you because I belong. Well, I'm in the culture. I'm not of the culture, if you can understand that. The primary philosophy of a large percentage of Mexican population is that because businesses and politicians and the drug dealers are corrupt, they can do whatever it is they want to do, and that contributes to behavior. I mean, Mexico is what Mexico is because the Mexican people are who the Mexican people are. And that's a great admonition, because if you want to build a society, there are examples out there of things that you just don't want to follow, things that you just don't want to be part of. And having citizens with bad attitudes going around saying everything sucks, nothing works, why bother, is very unhealthy, very unproductive. Here in America, there's a lot of people groups, Native Americans on reservations, African Americans in ghettos and in poverty-stricken areas on welfare. The same for Hispanics. You can even say the same for our large number of individuals who belong to the white American experience. And a lot of it has to do with attitude. Attitude matters. The last video I did under this format in my taxi was on how to deal some constructive ideas on how to help in the homelessness, especially the aspects related to mental illness and drug addiction. And you have to understand that situations that really occur because we produce them. We do it with our attitude. We do it with our the manner in which we look at life. And unfortunately, too many of us look at life with a very negative perspective, and that contributes to not being a part of society as far as being a registered voter and voting and choosing good leaders. And again, as proof of that attitude is you have an individual like Donald Trump get elected, and the end result is that that those who lost are under the assumption that he's a racist person and he's going to start rounding up homosexual people and he's going to start rounding up African Americans and Hispanic people. And if you follow Donald Trump, if you saw his rallies, if you saw his news interviews, if you went to his website and read his position papers on taxes and immigration and foreign policy, you would have a great opinion of Mr. Donald J. Trump. The individuals who put him in office understood what he stood for. I understand that he stands for low taxes, low national debt, responsible government spending, a cooperative among nations who share the same values to fight terrorism. And I have to wonder, how is it that so many people have a bad impression of an individual who ran on policies that apparently were attractive to enough individuals to elect him President of the United States of America. And of course, if you were under the foolish impression that the possible election president, why is every political season, university courses on the Electoral College are given to individuals who understand exactly how a president is chosen. You should be ashamed of yourself if you live in the United States of America and you don't know what the Electoral College is. And people have said, well, you could change it to where the popular vote actually elects the president. Well, okay, but if you move away from the Electoral College towards a popular vote system, then all individuals need to do is worry about the popular vote to get elected. And it's a lot easier, to get elected under the popular vote than the Electoral College. And what you're seeing as static results on the popular vote would change if the system was built to elect a person on the popular vote. Conservatives would have got out and voted and given Donald Trump the majority on the popular vote instead of using the Electoral College. But because the Electoral College is there, and that is the means by which a president gets elected, their focus was on the Electoral College, and they won the Electoral College. And for all intents and purposes, if you believe the liberal lie, then Hillary Clinton should have won the Electoral College, and Hillary Clinton should have won the popular vote. But because Americans are of a particular mindset, and you got to give them credit this time around, I was rather concerned that the people who voted for Barack Hussein Obama were now going to elect the next president of the United States of America, and that literally means that they were going to make another mistake, like Barack Hussein Obama. It's possible that the American people will actually do something that is totally counterproductive and dangerous to the nation. And you got to ask yourself, why were the American people voting for, excuse me, as I said before, the more I talk, the more I cough. You got to ask yourself, why were the American people voting for someone who had no administrative experience, never been a governor, never been a mayor, never run a business, and that's what you need. The office of the president is an administrative position, and is to administrate the federal government. That's what it exists. And people think that they're choosing a precedent for social justice, and that's a liberal construct. They have made it that way. They have made it appear as if the reason that you choose a precedent is to find social justice. And the problem with that idea is social justice according to who, or according to whom, regardless, depending on what your education is. But that's the question you want to ask yourself. If there is to be social justice, what kind of social justice? One of the things that people of the homosexual experience don't understand is if they demand the rights from people, then one day people can give you something, but the same thing they gave you one day, they can take away from you the next. And when you're concerned about social justice, that's what happens. What we're seeing in society, unfortunately, is those individuals who were demanding tolerance have become the most intolerant people ever. The people who are demanding a fair break and a fair opportunity for Obama to do whatever it is he wanted to do are now being the most vicious critics of Donald J. Trump. Donald J. Trump's not a racist person. Donald J. Trump doesn't want to harm anybody in the African American experience, or anybody in the Hispanic experience, or any other experience. Donald J. Trump is a smart person like I am, understands that there are things that are harming society, American society, and that those things need to be dealt with. But ultimately, it is the individual, it is the person, and what happens forward if Mr. Trump goes off the reservation, goes off the rails, and and starts trying to get along with liberals in Congress, and a lot of those liberals are Republicans. Paul Ryan is a dirty little liberal. He's him and John Boehner were trying to do everything possible to pass illegal immigration reform behind the backs of Americans, behind closed doors. And the Americans, it's a good thing that we don't live in a repressive and oppressive society where they can actually get accomplish things behind closed doors against the will of the American people. Now, should the American people honestly be against illegal immigration reform? Of course you should. Statistically speaking, and some people need to improve their statistics, but America has a severe unemployment and homeless problem. When you have 12 million unemployed and or homeless, you don't want to invite people from other countries to make the situation worse. It makes no sense to be paying people's housing, medical bills, food, giving them financial payments to buy tennis shoes for their children, and then invite a bunch of foreign cheap labor to take the jobs in America. You ultimately have to ask yourself what society you want to live in. And again, I'm going to keep saying this because it's the truth. If you examine societies like the societies in Afghanistan and Iraq and Saudi Arabia, African American nations, Latin American nations, you start to understand what happened for there to be so much turmoil in the world. There's what you call the power structure, where it's a dictatorship or a communist government or even a socialist government. The reality is that Canadians come to the United States of America for medical treatment because their own healthcare system is not a great healthcare system. That's the reality. Now, how do you have what contributes to that? First is the leadership, and unfortunately, the reality is that they have the military, and they have military hardware, tanks and bombs and guns. But still, the most powerful people in all societies are the people. Anytime you have 100 million people going to war with 2 million people, the 100 million should win. Now that doesn't mean that some individuals in the group of 100 million are not going to lose their lives. They are. But if you honestly want to keep from being, batched around and and being subjected to tyranny, to where you can't even get the basics of life, then you want to ask yourself, why is it that you're taking it? And I was watching 2 documentaries, and one of them explains why what we see in the Middle East is the Middle East. What used to be the Ottoman Empire after World War I was parceled out, and Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Kuwait were born out of what happened in World War I, and it was the French and the British and the Germans excuse me, who were responsible. America gets a lot of the blame for intervening in the Middle East. The reality is that the reason that the Middle East is the Middle East is because that's what it was created after World War I by nations of Europe. And then I was watching another documentary on oil, and you come to understand why companies, and unfortunately American companies, are responsible for the turmoil in this nation. Where you have problems in Africa and the Middle East, you have American companies trying to profit from oil. If you don't investigate, you don't learn, and if you don't learn, you just you really are not a great resource to the society. And that's what we have to pay attention. See what kind of people make up a society. And if we're going to sit down and make a video essay, I'm sure the people walking around me are wondering, well, look at this guy, he's talking to himself. And if I sat down and had a conversation with any person passing me by right now, they couldn't continue the conversation. They would get lost or say stupid stuff just so to keep the veneer of having pretending that they are intelligent. Most people would think that they're smart, but they really are not smart. And if you don't understand these issues, you don't understand why it is that you have the Saudi Arabia that you have, and you have the Iraq that you have, the Iran that you have, and all the other Middle Eastern countries. Now, I'm not going to justify or say that Islam, terrorism, the idea that they are somehow chosen because they are pure and God wants them to cleanse the earth, purge sin from the earth. Again, if you pay attention, you realize that the thing that makes you an infidel, that makes all of us infidels, is just the mere fact that we disagree with him. It is not that we get married, that we have sex before marriage, that we drink alcohol, that we watch movies with nudity, that we communicate with vulgarities and swear words. That's not what makes us an infidel. It's just that they have a particular perception, and anybody who doesn't have their perception is an infidel according to them. Now, I've written articles and done this or that video essay trying to help people understand that their Quran, they believe that their Quran is a divinely inspired religious book. They don't see it as something written by human hands. They, and I'm talking about the people who follow Islam, who follow the Quran, see the Quran as inspired by their God. And if you know anything about religion, when people believe that their God is giving them instructions, it's sort of do it or else. You may not want to do it, but if you believe your God is telling you to do it, and your God is going to punish you for not doing it, then you're going to be highly motivated, even if you don't want to do it. You're going to be highly motivated to do it. Now, if you take the Christian faith as an example, the only thing that Jesus Christ is asking me is for love. To love Him and to love my neighbor. That's the only thing that He's asking me. And to show that love by helping individuals understand His message. And I believe the original, the authorized King James Bible 1611 is the faithful Word of God. And there have been many versions, NIVs and whatever. I don't bother with them. I tell people not to bother with them. In Spanish, the equivalent is what is called the Reina Valera of 1960. But I believe it to be the inspired Word of God, and I don't read anything in the New Testament that tells me to go harm somebody that doesn't believe what I believe. Now, the Old Testament, and this is not the cruelty of God. Actually, this is the kind compassion of God. In the Old Testament, God sent the Jews out to completely slaughter their neighbors. And it wasn't because, He had nothing better to do and He was bored and He wanted to see people go to war with one another. It was because the people surrounding the Jewish people were engaged in behaviors that were threatening to the human race, the whole human race. It was idol worship and perversion and corruption to an extreme level. We're living, I keep telling people that if you're waiting for the second coming of Jesus Christ, you just better get yourself a chair and sit down, because it's not going to happen anytime soon. But you look at the world we live in, the animosity, the tension, people just doing bad things. If you look at that, you come to realize that it's almost, guaranteed that Jesus Christ will come sometime soon. And the reason being is that the human race is at that point in time where the human race can destroy itself. There are consequences to bad behaviors. When you're closer to sin, you're closer to animal, savage behaviors. And the reason that we're seeing everything that we're seeing, people fighting with people here in the United States of America, African American, members of the African American community, looking for white people to attack because they believe some foolish political idea that's been, injected into their brain by the liberal news media. When you see things like that, when you see terrorists, coming to America to try to kill Americans, or just, mothers and fathers drowning their children. I mean, when you see examples of Russia, what Russia is doing and China is doing, the military buildup of China, Russia's war with their neighbors, Ukraine, annexing Crimea, Russia interfering in other areas, you come to realize that there's something going on, and World War III is not what people think it's going to be. World War III will destroy the human race. If you have all the nations that have nuclear weapons decide to start using their nuclear weapons, it's over for humanity. If the United States of America goes to war with China, Russia, and Iran, it's over for the human race. It's going to be a fight to the finish, and no one's going to give up until they believe that they've won, and in reality there is no winning. And it will it will be a hurricane that swallows up all other countries that are not involved. So we are at a point in time where we ourselves are a danger to ourselves, and that is when Jesus Christ has to intervene. There is a Bible verse that says that the days will be shortened so some can be saved. And, you know, if you happen to have an experience, what I call a personal encounter with Jesus Christ, that leads to you understanding and believing that God is real and that Jesus Christ is real, and accepting Him as your Lord and Savior, then you're saved. I mean, right now, there's got to be millions of individuals who have a close personal relationship with Jesus Christ, who believe in Him, who have accepted Him as their Lord and Savior. They are saved. So when you balance the Bible verse, you know, the days will have to be shortened so some are saved. You know, are you talking about a physical, biological life being saved, or are you talking about the soul being saved? Because once you're saved, once your soul is saved, it's anything can happen to you. You can die in a car accident. You can be hit by lightning. It doesn't matter. When you pray to accept Christ, when you have a sincere prayer to accept Christ as your Lord and Savior, because you honestly believe that He exists, you are sealed by the blood of the Lamb. That's why Jesus Christ died. That's why Jesus Christ allowed Himself. That's why God Himself allowed Himself to be crucified, to be nailed to a cross. And people ask, well, why? Why would He do that? Well, you know, there's a way. I mean, if you're into information and information delivery systems, you ask yourself, isn't there a better way to get a message across? There's probably is a better way to get a message across, but we're such dumb people that even when, you know, we see the obvious, we have a failure in accepting the obvious. I do believe that God is real. I do believe this is the universe. I believe in what the Bible says. In Adam and Eve, had the advantage of hearing the voice of God, of getting daily instruction from God. And even though they had such a close, physical relationship and spiritual relationship with God, they managed to disobey God. And that's exactly who we are as individuals and people. Through the prophets and the priests, the Levitical priests, the Jewish people had, direct access to God. And God would give them instructions, and God would tell them, do this and don't do that. And for the most part, a lot of people of the Jewish experience in that time, in biblical time, historical biblical time, found a way to do everything that God didn't want them to do. And what concerns God is idol worship and moral corruption, sexual perversion. The reason for the flood, the Bible explains, is because all flesh had given itself over to corruption. And that's where we are. We think that there's nothing wrong with what we're doing. But in reality, there's a lot wrong with what we're doing. Having sexual relations before marriage is wrong. Having bad thoughts about your neighbor, animosity, anger, rage towards your neighbor is wrong. And it leads to a society that is not healthy, and the members of that society are not working for something good. The people who are upset with Donald Trump are not doing something good by harming individuals they happen to believe are responsible for their own personal um, elements of their life. And no one who voted for Donald Trump is responsible that African Americans in impoverished areas can't find employment. There's no racism behind it. I mean, if you want to look at people who are responsible for the African American experience, it would have to be members of the African American experience. They've allowed themselves to be put into ghettos. They've allowed themselves to be put into impoverished areas. They have bought the political philosophy of the liberals, of the Kennedys, and of the Rockefellers, who were so concerned about the inner cities that something had to be done, just had to create welfare programs, and their ambition has been government housing, food stamps, and welfare. And when your ambition is to be a, tied to government services, you're going to suffer. Yesterday I was meditating on an article that I may write, and it's about how it is a mistake not to be ambitious. Now, I'm not talking about ambition that leads to illness. As an example of all these oil companies, the leaders of these oil companies just wanting to get their hands on as much money as possible, and only being concerned about money, that millions of individuals have been slaughtered just to protect their financial interest in oil. I'm not talking about that kind of ambition. But when you don't have ideas, when you don't learn from life, when you're not wise, when you can't pass on wisdom to your children and grandchildren and make them better people, and by making them better people, you contribute to a better society, there's an error in that. And unfortunately, government, dependency robs people of ingenuity, innovation, creativity, passion, and there's a lot that is not done, doesn't get done because of individuals suffering from a negative attitude, going around saying everything sucks, nothing works, why bother? If you look at people like Donald Trump, who have succeeded in life, they didn't succeed in life because they were negative individuals. They succeeded in life because they were positive people, because they had hope, because they believed in something, because they were able to use their personal skills to develop, a dynasty. And in our society, what we seem to enjoy is tearing people down. It's a strange, conflict of interest that you're personally focused on trying to get something out of life, but then you're doing everything to tear down the resources that can help you succeed in life. If you want to learn how to succeed in life, you go to a successful person like Trump, like Gates, like Zuckerberg, but you go to somebody who has succeeded in life. And negativity isn't the road to success. And of course, you gotta make the point that it's not over. At any point in time in life, we can realize that we're wrong and start living the right way. And when we start living the right way, we help ourselves, we improve our life experience, we're healthier people, we have better moods, we have better emotions, and we free ourselves from that pain and suffering, and we're in life that we actually enjoy and we want to live. But part of life is civic responsibility. It's good to be happy and singing and dancing, but we also have to be aware of elected officials, the actions of elected officials. We have to be aware of the mindset, the value system of elected officials, and we have to keep them in line. You know, where I live, it's a pathetic little place. The government, the municipal government, has gone crazy with spending tax dollars on baseball stadiums, on something they're calling an arena, on a streetcar system, on they want a $200 million Olympic-style swimming pool in El Paso, Texas. Why? What's the necessity for that, other than wasting taxpayers' money? And the people aren't paying enough attention to register to vote and vote for better elected officials, and they're suffering the consequences. I'm going to say that the last 5 years, property taxes have gone up. The taxes that the county charges have gone up. The state sales tax hasn't gone up, but you have these spending projects, and taxes go up, and the people are not paying attention. If you want, you can. It is a microcosm in El Paso, Texas. It is a microcosm of what happens, in the nation. There's a small percentage of individuals in El Paso, Texas, who control government. Business people who spend their time whispering in the ears of the city representatives and the mayor and now the city manager, and try to get their little projects going, and that makes them money through taxpayers' money, and they're in charge. They have the power, and the individual is not paying attention and cannot be bothered to register to vote. So, and if you look at America's the same way. You have people in business, special interest groups, lobbyists, seducing politicians, seducing them with money or other things like drugs and sex, and controlling, policy. What ends up being policy, and what ends up being policy is against the will of the people. Barack Obama adding $11.5 trillion to the national debt was against the will of the people. And you got to ask yourself, what is it that Obama purchased with $11.5 trillion? And the reality is that they're going to walk away. Paul Ryan, John Boehner, Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, Harry Reid, even Obama are going to walk away, and we are left with the bill. We're the ones that are going to pay that. It has to get paid. I was having a conversation with an individual who actually thought America could just walk away from her debt. America can't walk away from her debt. If America walks away from her debt, nobody in the world is going to do business with America. So you have to pay that debt. You have to show that you can be responsible and that other nations can conduct business with you because you're not a credit risk. You're not a financial risk. Something that used to happen regularly in Mexico is that government people would show up to a business and tell the business owner, your business is no longer yours. Thank you very much and have a good day. When you have that kind of a system, people don't have confidence in conducting business with you. So, and you got to realize that you don't have to rely on the news media anymore. I could say, hey, why should I bother to do this video essay? Why should I bother to write this article? Why should I bother to have this conversation with that person? And go on my merry little way and live my little life and not worry about it. But I happen to believe that we can grow up, we can become wiser and learn and realize that our bad attitude, our everything sucks, nothing works, why bother attitude really is counterproductive to what we want to do. Every person wants to find that, um, that special life, that employment or business opportunity that allows them to get what they want to get out of life. But you can't want you can't want an employment environment with opportunities and advantages when you're working hard at destroying everything that contributes to there being employment opportunities and employment advantages. And that's what we do with our negativity. What is it that we think we're going to build with negativity? What is it that we think we're going to build by attacking people who have succeeded? When these fools and the Occupy Wall Street dummies, that go rage against the machine of globalism and tyranny of corporations. If you're going to have a job, it's because a corporation provided that job. And I find it interesting that individuals who are against the modern industrial complex don't go live off the earth, which is nothing wrong with it. I think I mentioned that in the last video essay that I made, is that we could very easily find a plot of land and grow enough to sustain our lives and take care of animals that we would eat to sustain our lives and not have to participate in the modern industrial complex. And when you have individuals who are trying to figure out, well, what is it that I do? I wanted to be a business manager. There aren't any jobs in business management. Do I go work for a fast food restaurant that's only going to give me part-time hours, and then use my car as an Uber car, to try to make it? People are trying to figure out life. People are trying to figure out what is it exactly that they can do, how they can go about finding a manner of which to take care of the basics of life. And the basics in life are shelter, food. Now we need health care. And I say now because there weren't hospitals in Moses' time. There were no hospitals. You have people who played the role of doctors, but their medicine, is nothing more than, home remedies that we tend to laugh at because we're very good at laughing at everything. And what we're going to do is, point one, Donald Trump got elected. Now he's not in office yet, and Obama seems to be doing everything possible to continue to destroy the positive elements of American society. It's like he wasn't happy with all the harm that he caused this country while he was in office. Now he wants to just, leave nothing but scorched earth on his way out. But we're starting from day one, and we got to ask ourselves, what is it that we want? Now, notice the focus is that we have to ask ourselves what we want. It's a nice idea that, Donald Trump has ideas, but the people of America have to make sure that he understands exactly what it is they want, which means, constant communication, emails, phone calls, send them what they call snail mail, a letter in the post office with the staff. So he understands that he needs to build the wall, he needs to stop illegal immigration, he needs to lower taxes, he needs to lower the national debt, he needs to rein in irresponsible government spending. At the end of Donald Trump's first 4 years, America cannot be worse than it is right now. And the individual contributes to that because the only thing that Donald Trump can do is administrate the American government. And by administrating the American government in an effective and efficient manner, a lot of people, a great majority of people, should be able to keep their money And by keeping their money, they should be able to live the kind of life that they want to live. And that's the way it's supposed to be. There has to be a delicate balance in the relationship between government and the people that that government serves. And if all we're going to do is get worked up by the news media and let them infect our brains with their nonsense ideas, then we're not going to be successful. The same people who dominated power during the Obama administration are the same people that want to dominate power during the Donald Trump administration. They exist. You can call them unseen dark forces, call them what you want to call them, but these individuals want to continue to manipulate American society for their benefit. And if we don't understand that, then we're just literally are playing games. That's why it's important for people to stay awake and involved and not to be led by the news media. People had very good common sense. You know, people had a fair understanding of why it is they were supporting Donald Trump. Now you need to make sure that Donald Trump sticks to that. And it has to be a constant thing. It can't be something you do once a month. You know, you can't be getting your information about Donald Trump's activities from the news source on the radio station you listen to as you're driving to work. You cannot be getting your information from your local news, your ABC, CBS, NBC affiliate, even Fox affiliate, because they're not going to tell you the truth. They're going to tell you the truth that the corporations that want to manipulate power want you to believe is the actual truth. Laura Ingraham on Friday, which was the 9th of December, was talking about all this belief of fake news. And that's what you basically are getting from ABC, CBS, NBC, your Fox News affiliate. And it's fake news because it has nothing to do with reality other than to manipulate the people into believing that something exists and then that something is bad for them and they must fight it. So they're literally trying to get you who supported Donald Trump, who put Donald Trump in office, to now fight Donald Trump, which you shouldn't. You should be smarter than your news, whatever news that is, and understand basic common sense of basic administration policies and practices and strategies and techniques. You can't spend more than you have. You can't steal from the people the majority of their income and be surprised that they're not able to take care of themselves. You can't create a health system complicated by major conglomerates who own the majority of hospitals, clinics, laboratories, and insurance that is very expensive, unaffordable. And then, you know, and they'd be surprised that the American people are sick. You need healthy Americans. You need healthy Americans to go to work, healthy Americans to take care of their own lives. And we really are surrounded by this corrupt business and politician system. And the sad part about it is that the majority of people aren't even smart enough to understand that the real problem is what people are calling the Illuminati, the New World Order. And if you use those terms, all of a sudden you're some kind of crazy person. But if you look at what's going on, if you look at oil policy, if you look at why there's so much death associated to the production of oil, you come to realize that is a sick, corrupted relationship between politicians and people in business. And I'm not saying that all people in business are bad, but we have to understand, we have to have a conscience. We need to adhere to a higher morality than they have. They may want to make a whole bunch of money and could care less how many people die in their interest in making money. We have to be better people. We have to be the kind of people that will say, we're not going to purchase your product because you're violating the human rights of individuals. We need to have a conscience. We need to understand that certain industries are responsible for wars, are responsible for dictators, are responsible for Boko Haram and Al Qaeda and ISIS. And we think that they're related to extreme religious beliefs, but in reality, these are individuals who are fighting to control power for a small percentage of individuals. I mean, the documentary I was watching about, oil production around the world was done by a news service I don't have that much respect for. But when you see it, you understand. I mean, in all these areas, in Iraq, in Baghdad, in Saudi Arabia, in Jordan, in African, in Libya, even in Brazil, Venezuela, you have oil being responsible for the unrest, chaos, anarchy, death, carnage, and destruction that we all see in the news every day. It isn't because people are bad and people are evil and people are, motivated to harm each other. It's because it's done in the name of oil. And if we're not smart enough to realize that, then, we're going to be subjected to their tyranny. You got to ask yourself, why is Paul Ryan so, obsessed with, why is Paul Ryan and Obama so obsessed with bringing in as much Arab nation people, Cuban people, Mexican people into the United States of America, when the United States of America has over 90 million individuals who just don't want to work, who are not participating in the workforce. That's a large number of people, 90 million people not working, not having a job, choosing not to have a job. And at the same time that 90 million people are choosing not to work, you have a government, people in government obsessed with the idea of importing a whole bunch of cheap foreign labor. And Donald Trump is correct. Many people from Arab nations are a direct threat to the American people. So you're bringing in individuals under the lie of being a humanitarian and helping refugees who want to murder Americans. And I guess I have to close the point. I mean, it's spoken about it long enough, but we as individuals have to be better people. We have to have better information. We have to be wiser. We have to have greater common sense. And we also have to be active. We have to be engaged and involved and making sure that whether it's a municipal government, a county government, a state government, or a federal government, that they're fully educated in what it is we want, what we will tolerate, what we will not tolerate, so we do not become another, miserable, horrible society where everybody is morally and ethically corrupt, and there's violence and aggression all over the place. I think that all of us have an interest of living in a peaceful, safe society, but we have to be part of that peaceful, safe society by being engaged. To be engaged, we have to be wise. We have to be smart. We have to know what are correct things. I run into too many people who happen to believe that the correct answer is government. Government dependency, government welfare, government food stamps, government housing, government health care. And it's convenient for them. See, that's what people don't understand. That the energy behind government dependency is that it allows the individual the freedom of being responsible for his or her own life. You know, it requires a lot of mental energy to work and to go to work every day. All of us would like to be home watching television, eating hot dogs, but the majority of us understand that if that's what we do, we're not going to have much. But there's a large percentage of people in any population who will take the opportunity to be lazy and irresponsible, because it's a lot easier to be home being fed than to have to go out and get a job and compete and, you know, and then run the risk of being fired because you're not a good employee or because the company found themselves a better employee. And so as a society, we have to ask ourselves, who is it that we want to be? If we want to live in a peaceful society where we're able to pursue our dreams, our passions, you know, then we have to be active members of that society, and we need to get rid of city representatives and mayors who only want to listen to a small percentage of business people and steal our tax dollars on foolish projects like streetcars and Olympic swimming pools and sports stadiums. I'm still wondering why it is that I, as a taxpayer in El Paso, Texas, was part of, you know, the group of people who gave a billionaire, and let me emphasize billionaire, $100 million to build his sports stadium. To me, a billionaire should be able to build his own sports stadium and buy his own baseball team without my tax dollars, you know. And that's what we need to guard against. So that's the close. That's the focus of this video, is to emphasize that we have to be awake, paying attention, and we have to be better people, and we can't allow other individuals to manipulate us into believing something. And, you know, let's let Mr. Trump actually, you know, make a policy before we're willing to condemn him for doing nothing. Let's see what he's going to do before we start complaining. So far, he can't do anything because he's not in office. So once he gets into office, that's when we'll see what he's doing. We'll see his tax policy. We'll see his budget. You know, we'll see his interactions with foreign leaders, and that's when we'll have information. And if he's not doing what it is that we wanted him to do, it isn't, you know, it's an opportunity to go crazy. Just an opportunity to start, you know, communicating with the individual so the individual understands, so Mr. Trump understands exactly what is expected of him while he's in office.